My name is Bert, and this is the Still Life Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Still Life Podcast. As always, I am your host, Bert. Hope everybody had a good weekend. I took Friday off, went fishing for the day, and just kind of unplugged for the day, so I opted not to do an episode on Friday. Here we are on Monday. I am mentally exhausted. Just kind of a little down today, just worn out from life and everything that's been going on, without getting too deep into my personal stuff, just some personal stuff going on that's just kind of been wearing on me the last several months. And, obviously the whole job thing, it just, man, every day I go without a job, it just gets a little bit harder and a little bit harder, and I'm just trying to be productive and make it through, but man, I it's kicking my butt today. It's really getting the better of me. Anyway, some stuff. I took some notes the other day, just in conversations I've had with friends and other people, and I excuse me. I've been thinking a lot about the whole relationships, and not just when I say relationships, I don't mean husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other kind of thing. As much as I do relationships as a whole, whether it's an intimate relationship or a friendship or work relationship, whatever the case may be, all these things play into relationships, all these facets. And when we talk about conflict in relationships, there's several elements that ring true regardless of the type of relationship. And number one, as human beings, we are wired for self-preservation. Doesn't matter if you're talking about a relationship at home, at work, with your friends, whatever. We are wired for self-preservation. So I'll do what I have to do to make sure that I look good and I come out of things, conflict or whatever, as clean as I possibly can, whether that means throwing somebody else under the bus or shifting the blame away from me or making up some excuse or whatever. And we're pretty much all like that to an extent. I don't know really anybody that isn't like that. Now, I will say that I do make the effort to admit when I've made mistakes or admit my wrongdoings or my error, because we are inherently flawed people and we all make mistakes. Now, sometimes in a work environment that can mean, disciplinary action, getting a talking to or getting written up or whatever the case may be. So, and obviously nobody wants to have a bad review at work. And so it's all about self-preservation. Well, let me throw this other person under the bus because they're not as good of an employee as I am, and that way I can still look good and I don't have to worry about me. But man, what a messed up way to treat other people, let's just think about that. I mean, how fun is it to have somebody else throw you under the bus? It freaking sucks, whether it was because you also did something wrong or maybe you weren't even involved in a situation and got thrown under the bus for something that you didn't even do. That's a crappy way to treat people, and we really need to change our mindset on that. Throwing people under the bus, for the sake of self-preservation or sabotaging anyone else for the sake of our own self-preservation is a terrible, terrible, terrible quality in a person. It's awful. In addition, in that self-preservation mindset, we play the blame game, that's kind of part of throwing people under the bus. Oh, well, so-and-so did this, and since they did that, I didn't have any choice but to do this thing, even though I knew it was wrong, and, whatever the case may be. Take freaking responsibility for your actions. Own your actions, right or wrong. Own them. Don't blame somebody else for your crap. Own your crap, man. I don't get it, and we learned it as kids. I can't remember how many times my sister and I blamed each other for crap that the other one did because we didn't want to get in trouble. It's something that we learned very early on, and if it's not kept in check, it can get ugly and it can lead to the burning of bridges and, catastrophic failure in relationships and friendships and work relationships and in intimate relationships as well. because we're wired for that self-preservation. We're wired to blame things on somebody else so we don't get in trouble. But especially when you're in an intimate relationship, what good is blaming your partner for your own problems or your, lack of integrity to do the right thing or whatever the case may be? What good is the blame game? It's so destructive, and not just destructive, it's self-destructive, and we don't even realize it. Because when we start blaming other people, we start losing other people's trust, and not just the people that we're blaming things on, but everyone else. I mean, think about it. If you're never at fault for your own actions or wrongdoings or misdeeds or mistakes, you probably shouldn't be trusted with anything. If you can't take responsibility for what you've done. No one forced you to do anything. You did these things on your own. You made the conscious decision and the effort to, do whatever it was. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, there may or may not be consequences, and you need to just own it. Own what you've done. If you're wrong, hey, you know what? I made this decision because of, A, B, and C. Obviously, that was the wrong decision. I apologize. I was incorrect. Let's fix it. How do we resolve this? How do we move forward? That sounds like a much better solution than saying, oh, well, it was so-and-so's fault. I had to do it because so-and-so did this. Well, that person caused me to do it. That person made me do this. Cool, but what did you choose to do because of that person's actions? What did you do? I'm not asking about what other people did. What did you do? What did I do? We need to be looking inwardly at ourselves and not outwardly at everybody else. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, I can say whatever I want, but it's all on me. My success or my failure is ultimately dependent on my own actions. Nobody else's. Whether I'm pissed off, upset, angry, doesn't matter. It's my decision at the end of the day, And the other piece of that, too, is that, when there is conflict, when there is, an argument or somebody's done something wrong or whatever the case is, we need to look at conversation and communication as being constructive versus destructive. When we're throwing people under the bus, trying to preserve ourselves, trying to blame other people, that's all destructive communication, destructive conversation. We're breaking down relationships to make ourselves look or feel better. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. Instead, we need to work on constructive. I made this decision. I own it. May not have been the right decision. Let's figure out how we can adjust fire. Let's repair this relationship, fix the things that we can fix, learn from these things, and move forward together in a positive direction. Let's be constructive. I can admit that I was wrong. I hope you can do the same. I hope that you can find it in you to have a little bit of mercy. I obviously I made the wrong decision, and we're talking about obviously stuff that doesn't have catastrophic consequences. Those things have to be dealt with a little differently, but still we need to, in the sake of being constructive and not being destructive in communication, we need to have grace and mercy towards others if we expect it from others as well. So you got to give it if you expect to receive it from anybody. Because if you don't show mercy and grace to others, why should anybody give it to you? Think about that. So that's all I've got for today. Just stuff I've kind of been sitting on over the weekend and really thinking about. Stuff that I try to work on a daily basis, and I hope that you all do as well. Let's start looking inwardly at how we can solve the problems versus outwardly, because it all starts with us. The smallest decisions can sometimes make the biggest waves. And when we have the ability to admit fault, I think a lot of times it shocks people because we expect everybody to blame things on other people and to try and act in a manner of self-preservation so they look good, because we do the same thing. But what if we flip the script? What if we change the mindset? And what if we start looking internally? Oh, you know what? I'm really sorry that happened. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that you didn't like my decision, or, it was apparently the wrong decision for this scenario. I'm sorry I did the wrong thing. How can I fix that? What do I need to do with me? How do I fix that conflict in me so that you and I don't have conflict in the future? And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining me today on the Still Life Podcast. As always, for questions, comments, topic ideas, suggestions, or to become a sponsor of the Still Life Podcast, you can reach us, thestilllifepodcast@gmail.com. That's thestilllifepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to visit us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at The Still Life Podcast, Twitter at The Still Life Pod, and our YouTube channel, The Still Life Podcast. Thanks again for joining me today on The Still Life Podcast. We'll talk again soon.